Hey, it's Mike Brennan. We're back with another edition of Michigan Marijuana Today. And I have with me my co host, Dave Crable. Say hi, Dave.
Hi, Dave.
Yes, we try to keep it light here. And so today, today's topic is not particularly light, but it will be interesting. We're looking at what's happening right now with medical marijuana being rescheduled from 1 to 3. And we brought in some legal advice for this because this is way over my head. Tom LaVigne, I think you're still with Cannabis Counsel, right? Or have you?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure. Tom and I go way back. I've known him since we started covering the industry, gosh, before COVID. So I guess that puts us back a ways. Anyway, that's what we wanted to talk about today. And then, of course, on the 29th of this month, we're recording in June, there's going to be a hearing in Washington to review all this with the medical marijuana and or maybe even include recreational marijuana in there and start the process, hopefully, of rescheduling that from 1 to 3. So let's start off with a little primer here, Tom. I'm sure everybody in the industry knows what's going on, but we also have a broad business audience that isn't a cannabis junkie like us and knows what's happening. So why don't you explain what has happened with medical marijuana, what that means?
Sure. President Biden sort of started the process uh, saying that he wanted to redesignate marijuana from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3. Department of Health and Human Services did a great job of evaluating whether there's medical use of marijuana. And largely based on that study, which did find medical use um, and some other factors, President Trump came out with an executive order in December. And then the Department of Justice came down with an order April 23rd that was recorded in the Federal Registry, sort of became official April 28th, to redesignate immediately medical marijuana, which is subject to state medical marijuana licenses, as well as medical marijuana that is approved by the FDA. So there's a few medicines that went through that process and got federal approval. So those two categories right now got rescheduled from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. So it did not include the adult use recreational marijuana. They did schedule hearings for June 28th that are supposed to be completed by July 15th to consider rescheduling recreational adult use marijuana. So we're all hoping that that happens.
Can I ask you a question, Tom?
Yeah.
So our Michigan has had a strong caregiver base. I know it's dwindling, but does that mean a caregiver now can file their taxes and expense their fertilizer and utility expenses?
Yes, the 280E clearly only applies to um, Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 substances. So given that this was given immediate effect for medical marijuana, and I do believe both the Medical Marijuana Act, the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act that set up the registry for caregivers and patients, as well as the MMFLA, would both be covered by this, although that hasn't really been determined yet.
MMFLA, could you help me out with that?
Yeah, that's where the legislature passed commercialization of medical marijuana. Now, some people might argue that only the MMFLA, the commercial, where you had provisioning centers and you had mandated testing and you had a little, more strict regulation, that maybe only that would apply because it's it's a bit more rigorous.
More
And
regulation.
yeah, but I would argue that the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act as well, that's clearly, medical marijuana. You had to get a physician recommendation in order to get it. So there is that control. And hopefully that's enough where 280E would not apply to caregivers as well.
And how strong is our caregiver law? Is that under attack?
It's still in force. Um, there has been a couple of bills introduced recently that's trying to recriminalize some of.
Yeah, I saw House Bill 5756. We're part of the Michigan. I have Michigan as part of the Michigan Cannabis Coalition,
Uh-huh.
and some of the language in there, it's like they're trying to, backpedal on some of these issues.
I know, and the Adult Act really, the intention was clear that no more felonies for possession
Right.
of this plant. That was the whole idea, and for them to now, there has been a bad case recently also that where the prosecutors charged a felony for a large amount, but the adult use initiative provided um, what the penalties are supposed to be when you have more than twice the amount that you're permitted. Um, that was limited to just a misdemeanor. And in the event that it was found to be a pattern for a commercial purpose, then and only then was there the possibility that misdemeanor could carry jail time of up to 1 year. But that's it. No more felonies. So I think that court was wrong. And some of the testimony at the committee hearing um, was saying that, oh, we need this law, otherwise we can't do felonies.
Mm.
So there's a bit of a mismatch there, and I think the big prison industry, including the Geo Group, was lobbying heavily for these changes because they've seen such a drastic decrease in their prison population since legalization.
Also, when I looked at the numbers for last month from the CRA, medical marijuana, gosh, is just a fraction. I mean, it's like $400,000-$500,000 a month, give or take, versus 270 or $80 million for recreational marijuana. So, I mean, it's really for Michigan, it doesn't have a whole big of an impact, does it?
Right, and it may be, depending on what happens in June or July with those hearings, um, we may need to go back to medical. We may need to really encourage people to go back and get their cards, and I would encourage people to go back and get their cards right now. And I do have at least one retailer who kept their medical provisioning center in Adrian, MSC3. Nikki Hernandez down there has always maintained her medical, and she draws patients from all over and has quite a medical emphasis, although she also has an adult use license.
And if I recall, if you have a medical card, then you don't pay the 10% excise tax, right? That's
Right.
versus the recreational where you do. And right, well, actually, I'm not sure where we're at. We were at 16% taxes, and then now we've got this wholesale tax at 24%, which we can also discuss. But that's moving all the way up to the Michigan Supreme Court, fast tracking it.
Yeah.
And I was just reading in another publication that I won't name because I don't want to give them the publicity, but it was an interesting story. Apparently, Treasury didn't get very much money because everybody was supposed to pay on April 20th for the first quarter, and Treasury was expecting a boatload of money, and instead it got maybe $30 million, $40 million, which is a lot less than what they were figuring, right? So.
Yeah, interesting. And
Yeah.
really now that it's down to Schedule 3, even the sales tax can no longer be collected because this is medicine now.
Nice. Wow, that's huge. And then I see in the child protective services, that's going to impact those relationships with
Yes,
parents. That's huge.
yes, really, this does accord the patients a lot of rights now that it's no longer Schedule 1. Housing can no longer be denied, or that would become a federal crime by the housing people. Employment can no longer be denied, or that would be a federal crime by the employer. No more testing of patients because you're not allowed to ask patients about their medical conditions. So they can no longer test for marijuana, period, across the board, whether you're a patient or not, really, because the inquiry itself potentially could be about the medical condition of the people. The American Disabilities Act now clearly applies to patients. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission cases can now move forward by patients. So it's really accorded a lot of rights to patients that can now be asserted.
So what about guys who have commercial truck drivers? I offer some CBD salve to my hockey buddies, and the guys that have the CDLs, they're nervous about even a topical because they might someone runs into them, they get tested.
Right, right. I think even there, this would cross the line because it's an inquiry into the medical condition of the people to
Oh,
do the testing. Now, in the event that there's an accident and there's a test and there's found to be negligence or something like that, you cross that line when you come to that, as you would with alcohol
yeah.
or any other substance. But for them to bar employment or bar that license at this point, or to require upfront testing, really violates uh, violates the law now that it's no longer a Schedule 1.
Why didn't we hear about this more in the news? This is a big deal. What dropped at the end of April, and that it's been over a month, and you know you haven't really heard anything about it.
Yeah,
Well,
and
we've covered it, but the general press hasn't. But go ahead. So.
Right, that's what I'm saying. You don't, I have family that still watches some network news, and I'm sure they didn't see anything about it.
yeah, and I think Treasury is the only agency that has moved forward, giving some sort of guidance. I will expect the same from HUD, and I'll expect the same from the EEOC and from these different agencies and the VA. And they should really be coming forward and working on new
Well,
guidance because
Yeah.
the VA cannot deny service, or any medical institution. They can't deny service based on medical use, as some of them have.
Yeah,
I'm looking.
that's really important for the veterans. I know a lot of them have PTSD, and they use medical marijuana or even recreational marijuana to help alleviate some of their symptoms. So, and VA was prohibited previously from prescribing that. So I guess that changes now, right?
Yes, it does. And I don't want to have to sue them. They should now take the initiative, given that it's rescheduled. Those current rules no longer apply, and they need to enact new rules and guidances for VA facilities around the country. Um, our medical schools need to kick in, and our hospitals, because now really they can't deny use of uh, medical marijuana inside of hospitals, for example. But hospitals aren't really ready for that, and that needs to be fixed. The
So you're saying there might be a medically approved bong,
I'm saying
a breathing treatment?
No, I think probably more like an edible, right? Hitting the bong in a hospital. I don't know about that one.
They may require a tincture or an edible, but I don't know.
No.
We'll have to see.
If somebody could design something, a filter to capture the exhale, I mean, why
Yeah,
not?
I agree.
So we're talking about banking, Tom. Do you think I should fire up the I have manufacturing again? I might be able to get a checking account.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Oh, tell them that story, Dave, when you went for your banking and what they said to you.
Yeah. So I have. Thank God for North, the bank up in North Star Bank or something, some little community
Right.
bank.
Yeah.
They banked us, right? But most my other businesses are all at Huntington, right here in town, and so I went into Huntington to get the big boy bank account, and they wanted to put me on a CBD program, and they wanted to know how much THC was in the frisbee.
Oh my gosh. Isn't that something?
You know, 'cause that was a product that's be a
Yeah.
CBD. So
We
these
you
CBD
asked of
programs are
us.
charging $250 to $1,000 a month for a cannabis or
Yeah.
CBD account. Is that going to go away?
That has to go away.
Wow, that's a huge win.
That is definitely because
That's a
it's no
huge
longer
win.
Schedule One for medical. The thing is, that's just for medical. So the adult use has not been rescheduled, and most of our businesses, um, like Mike was pointing out, they're all adult use, so they don't have
Right.
that advantage yet. Another reason to really encourage their customers to get patient cards and for them to, I have clients, I'm getting pre-qualified again under medical and getting them licensed under medical, and they're promoting to their customers that they should go back and get their patient cards.
And that's what, $75 or something like that to get a card, or what's the going rate?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it couldn't hurt. I mean, because that right away you don't pay as much in taxes, and it sort of insulates you from whatever's going to happen next, which is what we don't know. But let's since
Right.
we've got about 10 minutes left, let's talk about this hearing coming up. The government moves very slowly now, unless this is, of course, a midterm election year, and the president may decide he wants to move faster to try to court the cannabis crowd. But do you think that's likely at all? I mean, because it's still going to take what, months or maybe a year for them to really take a look at because there's a lot of bugaboos with recreational, the devil's lettuce and all that stuff. So what do you think's going to happen?
I could see him pushing this forward. I was surprised by the DOJ making it immediate, for immediate effect, as they did. Um, so I know that that's a short window normally for these sorts of things to go through. Oftentimes that will take over a year, but the process had started under Biden, and there were. So it's been going on for decades, really. They've had their chance uh, to go through the process, and we have treaty obligations, which this is largely based upon, and part of our obligations under the treaty um, is to allow access to these medicines by patients, and that was part of this. And the
Treaty with who?
rescheduling of the plant should be go across the board. If it's a rescheduled plan, it should be a rescheduled plan.
A treaty with Canada?
No, an international treaty that Harry Anslinger, after he moved out of our federal government, became a UN an ambassador to the UN and pushed for the. Um, it's an international treaty for narcotics and to push for the um, criminalization internationally and to bind the United States um, for the treaty obligations, because there was an issue of, under federalism, we have dual sovereignty, we have states' rights, and the federal law should not really have this sort of reach as it does. But once we were signed up for this international treaty in the late 60s, that sort of laid the groundwork for the Controlled Substances Act. That was really pursuant to our obligations under these international treaties. And that's how they avoided the dual sovereignty issue. I mean, we still pushed for the dual sovereignty with our state laws, and we believe federalism is alive and well. But at the same time, we had the Controlled Substances Act in place, justified in large part by these international treaties.
And it seems like on the whether or not recreational is going to get rescheduled, the DEA is being dragged along reluctantly. They are not real excited about this. I guess in part because what would we have with the DEA? What would they cover if they didn't have cannabis anymore, right? But yeah, the DEA has been dragging their heels on this. But do you think this is going to slow the process down?
Well, this really needs to now be taken out from the umbrella of the DEA. This is really a health issue. This should be covered under Health and Human Services. It should be treated, differently, I think. And, potentially it should come under the umbrella of Health and Human Services, if you ask me. I don't know.
And Dr. Oz and Kennedy both seem favorable to cannabis, right?
What's that? The John F. Kennedy and
Dr. Oz and Kennedy, aren't they
yeah.
involved in that?
Oh, yes. Yes, they are. They do sort of emphasize, natural products in their policies. And I believe that they are in favor. So that could help.
Yeah. Feels like we have momentum are going our way finally.
Yeah, I really do believe we have a lot of momentum. There's sort of a strange aspect to this order where, because of the treaty obligations, that it's brought up as part of this order. Businesses, license holders in the states may be required to, on paper, transfer the marijuana to the DEA, and then the DEA transfer it back, and an additional fee might be required, a DEA license. And I'm not sure how that's going to logistically happen, but in that DOJ order, they said under our treaty obligations, there's supposed to be a monopoly on the distribution by the member nation. And they acted like they were going to treat it almost in a perfunctory manner, that it would be transferred on paper momentarily and then transferred back for a fee. So we'll see how exactly that may happen. And the medical licensees are asked to go and register under the DEA and apply for this DEA license. Of course, a lot of my clients don't have the medical licenses yet, except for that one that I mentioned. And they're all a little bit leery about going to DEA and handing over their name, given the history of being so sordid and horrible on the treatment of this.
What does it cost a dispensary to get a medical marijuana license? What's the fee on that? Do you know?
It's $3,000 for the pre-qualification, and then it'll be $5,000 annually to the local government. And then, for example, for a Class C grow, it's $15,000. That's the highest number. A retailer, it's something like $3,810. And under the medical licenses, those fees change every year depending on the number of patients and the costs. They usually come out in September. But I think right now for a retailer, it's just under $3,900.
That seems reasonable, all things considered, you know.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
especially if it drives a lot of business your way, right?
right.
Well, but you're not limited. It's not the same program where you're limited to like 12 patients or something like that, right?
No, no, that's under the commercialized, um,
Medical
they
program.
call it the MMFLA that was enacted by the
Okay.
legislature, where they have provisioning centers. They do have class A and B, A, B, and C grows and processing licenses with no limit on the, well, they have different limits of plant limits. It's
Okay.
500, 1,000, and 1,500 plants are A, B, and C under the medical.
Yeah, that's a lot of biomass. So what can people do, to move things forward? Who should we nudge for this hearing that's coming up?
Well, in order to testify at that hearing, you had to apply by May 28th. Our Congress needs to be lobbied, our US Congress, because there's still some adjustments legislatively that are required to really carry this out. And we don't have a lot of friends on those committees. Um, I think it's Shelby Moore Capito hasn't really been a friend. She's a chair of the Labor, Health, Human Services, and Education. Robert Adderholt, Rosa DeLaura, not a lot of friends. Andy Harris, Sanford Bishop Jr., are some of the chairs of the relevant committees. Gary Peters is on one of the committees, so we could push him on the Senate side.
But he's only around till January, and then we'll have a new senator. Don't know
Yep.
which one's going to win, but who knows, you know. So,
Yeah.
any kind of final thoughts here before we wrap up? I know everybody's got stuff they got to do. So, Dave, any final thoughts?
No, I'm encouraged. We're fighting to get rid of this Mary Miller amendment that they snuck into the appropriations bill that's going to kill full spectrum CBD products.
Yeah.
But I blame the industry in part on that too. We always said hemp wasn't an intoxicant, and now we have all these intoxicants created from hemp. So I understand the concern. And I just wish there were clearer lanes and, and
Yeah.
and dealt with the whole plant. We've been begging for years for fair regulation. Two words: fair and regulation. That's what we're asking for. That's all.
It's not asking too much, if you ask me.
Yeah,
This new order specifically excludes hemp in its creation of the new definitions. It's deferring to the Hemp Act as being separate.
yeah, which
And
is totally confusing to everybody.
yeah, yeah, and I've always been an advocate for the real industrial uses. Going back to Hawaii, 1989. There were some activists out there, and I just found it amazing how it can be used for plastic and paper and all kinds of things that could replace some of these petroleum products and be much more sustainable.
Yeah.
And then, Dave, how does somebody reach out to you? I know you have a small business where you sell sabs and things like that. We'll give you a shameless plug here. Go ahead and plug what you're doing.
iHempHarvest.com. iHempHarvest. That's my website for the sab and such.
Okay. Tom, any last words? And then, of course, same thing. Tell folks how they can reach out to you.
Well, everybody needs to lobby both the Michigan legislature to try to defeat these bills that are trying to recriminalize marijuana, and the U.S. legislature to sort of harmonize the federal laws with respect to the new scheduling and really accord these patients the rights that they deserve, and push for the adult use to also get rescheduled. And I'm at CannabisCounsel.com. That's Cannabis Counsel with the L on the end.
All right, and I'm Mike Brennan, and you've been watching Michigan Marijuana Today. If you got a topic you think we should be exploring in the future, send me an email. It's my last name, Brennan, BRENNAN, at MITechNews.com. MITech News has been around for 26 years. We started to cover the marijuana situation because it's such a big business in 2018, and we continue to do so. It's actually one of our hotter topics on our website.